The river ran quietly through the valley, glistening in the late afternoon sun. Its surface shimmered like liquid glass, disturbed only by the playful dart of small fish beneath and the gentle rustle of reeds at its edge. For the shepherd girl, this was her sanctuary. She had led her flock into the meadow, tied her sheepdog beneath a tree, and wandered to the water with the thought that no one in the world would find her here. She slipped from her dress, folding it neatly on a stone, as if even the river should respect her modesty. Her long, dark hair tumbled freely down her back, catching the sunlight in strands of gold. Stepping into the water, she let out a small gasp. Cool, clean, refreshing against her sun-warmed skin. For a moment, she was not a poor shepherd's daughter, not a girl burdened with tending animals from dawn to dusk. Here, in the river's embrace, she felt almost like a queen, but queens are never truly unseen. The Apache man had not meant to intrude. His horse had grown thirsty after a long ride across the rocky plain. Following the sound of water, he guided the animal down through the reeds. He expected nothing more than to fill his waterskin and be on his way. Yet, when he parted the bushes, his sharp eyes froze. There, in the water, was a girl. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. The sunlight bathed her in gold. The river lapped gently at her waist, and her laughter at some private thought carried softly across the breeze. She was beautiful in a way that startled him, like a wildflower blooming where no one had cared to look. He should have turned back immediately, but instinct rooted him to the spot. The girl sensed something, a shift in the air, a prickle against her skin. She turned her head and saw him. Her scream echoed across the valley, sharp and furious. She dropped beneath the water, arms crossing her chest, her face a storm of fear and outrage. "You!" she shouted, her voice trembling between shame and rage. "You dare watch me!" The Apache raised his hands at once, his voice calm but urgent. "I did not mean to. I came for water, nothing more. I did not know you were here." "Liar," she spat, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "You've seen me, undressed. Do you know what that means?" He shook his head slowly, still holding his palms out as if warding off her fury. "It means nothing. A mistake. I will leave you." But she would not let him go so easily. She stood, water streaming from her shoulders, her dignity salvaged. "Only by defiance. No, you cannot leave. You have seen what no man should see. In my people's eyes, I am ruined unless you marry me." The Apache blinked, stunned into silence. Marriage? From one accidental glance? Her eyes, however, told him she was serious. They blazed with a mixture of fury and determination, the fire of a girl who refused to let fate write her ruin. He almost laughed, but something in her trembling hand stopped him. This was no jest. For her, honor was survival. For her, this moment meant the difference between being cherished or cast away. She lifted her chin, water dripping like jewels down her neck, and declared with a voice steadier than she felt, "You've seen me undressed. Now, you must marry me." The Apache man stared at her, caught between disbelief and an unfamiliar stirring in his chest. What had begun as a mistake was quickly becoming the start of something far more dangerous. The Apache man stood still, his horse shifting impatiently behind him. He had faced ambushes, wild animals, storms, and nights colder than death itself. But never had a slender shepherd girl confronted him with such fire. Her eyes, dark as the river's depths, locked onto his, refusing to let him look away. The water clung to her skin, glittering in the sunlight. Yet there was nothing delicate in her stance. She looked more like a warrior defending her honor than a helpless girl caught off guard. "You cannot walk away," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the rippling current. "Do you not understand? I am no longer free. By the laws of my people you have bound me." The Apache frowned, his deep voice steady. "I meant you no harm. I saw only for a moment, and I turned away. A moment is enough, she snapped back. Enough to steal my honor. Enough to ruin me in the eyes of my family. Enough to give tongues reason to wag in the village. Her lips trembled, but she held her chin high, determined not to show weakness. He had expected tears, perhaps even silence after her outburst. Instead, she confronted him with the ferocity of someone who refused to be broken by shame. That startled him more than the sight of her in the water had. You think this is a small thing, she continued, stepping closer, the river lapping at her thighs. But you do not know the weight a woman must carry. My father will not take me back if I return dishonored. My mother will weep, but she cannot fight for me. And the village? Her eyes narrowed. They will cast me out, call me cursed, whisper that I invited this. Her words struck him like stones. He had seen women banished from camps before, though never for such a reason. In his world, an accidental glance was not a sentence of ruin. Yet here she stood, telling him her life would be destroyed unless he made it right. The Apache shook his head slowly. Your laws are not mine. I owe you nothing. Her breath caught, and for a moment fear flickered in her eyes, but only for a heartbeat. She clenched her fists, gathering every ounce of courage she had. Then I will follow you, she declared. I will tell my people you claimed me as yours, that you have already taken me. You will not walk away free while I am left in chains. The man's jaw tightened. He had not expected such defiance from a girl barely grown. She spoke as though she had already chosen her fate, binding it to his whether he liked it or not. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the gentle snort of his horse. Finally, he stepped closer to the water's edge, his gaze never leaving hers. You know nothing of me, he said, his voice low and dangerous. My people are warriors. My life is hard and bloody. Do you think you could bear it? Do you think you could be wife to a man like me? She lifted her chin higher, droplets of water sliding down her cheek like diamonds. I do not care what you are. You have seen me. That makes you mine, whether you like it or not, Apache. Her words rang out like a vow, carried on the wind, for the first time he felt something stir inside him, an emotion he could not name. Admiration, perhaps, or a dangerous curiosity. She was unlike any woman he had ever known. The shepherd girl stood in the river, fierce and unyielding, and in that moment, the Apache realized she was not asking. She was commanding fate itself. The Apache man's jaw tightened as he studied her, this fearless shepherd girl who dared to stand before him, as though she could command the stars themselves. Her declaration still echoed in his ears. That makes you mine. It was absurd. It was reckless. It was strangely captivating. But he could not allow himself to be bound by the words of a girl he had stumbled upon by accident. His life was not a story of shepherd songs and village gossip. It was a trail of battles, blood, and restless wandering. What did he know of marriage? What could he offer a girl like her besides hardship and danger? No, he said at last, his voice low and unyielding. I will not marry you. The shepherd girl's lips parted, her eyes widening as if he had struck her. For a moment, her proud defiance faltered, and she looked younger, more fragile, like a bird with a broken wing. But then, as swiftly as it came, her weakness vanished, replaced by a fiery determination. You think you can walk away from this? She demanded, stepping forward until the water reached only her knees. You think you can leave me here ruined while you ride off as though nothing happened? I will not let you. He shook his head, a flicker of impatience crossing his features. I saw you only by chance. I lingered no longer than the blink of an eye. It means nothing. You are unharmed. Go home to your family. Unharmed? She spat the word, anger flashing in her eyes. You know nothing of harm. My people will not ask if you touched me. They will not ask if I wanted this. They will. See only that you looked upon me when I was bare, and to them that is worse than death." The Apache's brows furrowed. He understood honor. His people lived and died by it. But this, to cast out a girl for what she had no control over, it was madness. "You speak of laws that bind you in chains," he muttered, almost to himself, "but I am no prisoner of them." "Then you will make me your prisoner instead?" she shot back, her voice trembling with emotion. "Better to be bound to a man of my choosing than to be thrown away like unwanted lamb's wool." Her words cut deeper than he expected. For all her fire, there was a raw honesty beneath her defiance. She was not merely angry. She was afraid. Afraid of returning home to shame. Afraid of being seen as nothing more than a fallen girl. Still, he steeled himself. "I cannot. I will not." He turned his back on her then, taking the reins of his horse. The animal snorted, pawing at the ground as if sensing the tension in the air. The Apache mounted swiftly, his tall frame settling into the saddle with practiced ease. Behind him, he heard the splash of water and the crunch of pebbles as she stumbled onto the bank. "Coward!" she cried after him, her voice fierce but laced with desperation. "You hide behind your freedom while you steal mine. If you ride away now, may the spirits curse you with my face in every dream." The Apache pulled his horse to a halt, her words burning into him. He did not turn, but his shoulders stiffened. For a long moment silence hung between them, broken only by the river's murmur and the distant bleating of sheep. Finally, without a word, he urged his horse forward. The shepherd girl watched him ride away, her fists clenched, her heart pounding, with fury and humiliation. He thought he could refuse her, that he could leave her to face ruin alone. But she swore to herself, with all the fire in her spirit, that this was not the end. One way or another, she would make the Apache man hers. The shepherd girl stood barefoot on the riverbank, her wet dress clinging to her as the Apache rode away. His figure grew smaller against the horizon, but his rejection loomed over her like a storm cloud. She had shouted, she had demanded, she had even cursed him, yet still he left. For the first time that day, her shoulders sagged. She sank onto a rock, wrapping her arms around herself. No longer the fiery warrior of words, but a trembling girl with the weight of disgrace pressing on her chest. Her sheepdog whined softly, as if sensing her pain, and nudged at her knees. She buried her, fingers in its fur, trying to steady her racing heart. "Why must it be me?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Why must I always be the one fate chooses to test?" Her family had little, only a few dozen sheep, and a patch of land too rocky to yield much grain. Her father often said she was his strongest child, the one he could rely on to guard the flock. Her mother, weary from years of toil, looked to her to carry burdens no girl her age should bear. She had always been proud of that strength, until now. Strength, she realized bitterly, could not protect her honor. She imagined what would happen if she returned home and confessed. Her father's weathered face would darken with shame. Her mother would wring her hands, torn between defending her daughter and bowing to the judgment of neighbors. And the village, oh, the village would tear her apart with whispers sharper than knives. Ruined, they would call her. A girl who let a stranger look upon her. It was not fair. She had done nothing wrong. Yet in her people's eyes, innocence would not matter. Perception was stronger than truth, and gossip spread faster than wildfire in dry grass. A tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away angrily, hating herself for the weakness. She had promised herself long ago that she would never cry for the cruelty of others, never give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But alone by the river, with only the dog as witness, the tears came anyway. Her thoughts drifted back to the Apache. His face had been unreadable, his voice calm but firm. He had refused her as if the matter were simple, as if her life were not balanced on the edge of a blade. Did he not understand? Or did he understand too well and simply not care? Still, There had been a flicker, a hesitation before he rode away. She clung to that memory like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. "Maybe he will return," she whispered, though doubt gnawed at her. Maybe he felt something too. The sky deepened to gold as the sun dipped lower, painting the valley in fire. She knew she could not stay at the river forever. The flock would wander if left too long. Her family would ask questions. But her heart ached with the weight of secrets too heavy to carry home. For the first time, she considered what it might mean to be cast out, to leave the only life she knew, not as a daughter or a shepherd girl, but as nothing. A shadow. Her arms tightened around herself. No, she would not allow it. If honor could be stolen in a glance, then she would steal it back in her own way. She would not walk meekly into ruin. And deep inside, beneath the fear and sorrow, a stubborn seed of hope took root. The Apache might have refused her once, but she was not finished with him. Not yet. The girl rose to her feet, the last rays of sun setting her hair aglow. Though her eyes were red from crying, her jaw was set with determination. If the Apache thought her fragile, he was wrong. She would show him her strength. She would show the world her worth. And when the time came, he would have no choice but to see her not as a burden, but as destiny. By the time the shepherd girl returned home with her flock, the valley was cloaked in twilight. Her parents asked no questions, only assumed she had lingered in the meadow. Yet inside, she carried a storm, shame, fear, and a resolve that would not let her sleep. At dawn, while her family still rested, she gathered her courage and followed the trail she knew the Apache had taken. Her sandals wore thin on the rocky ground, but her determination did not falter. She had made her choice. She would not return to her village in disgrace. She would make him face her and fate once more. By midday, she found him. He was camped, beneath a cluster of mesquite trees, his horse tethered nearby, smoke rising from a small fire. He looked up when she stepped from the brush, his sharp eyes narrowing, though he did not reach for his weapon. "You again," he said evenly, though his voice carried a weight of disbelief. "I told you to go home." "I cannot," she replied, lifting her chin. Dust streaked her dress, and her hair clung to her face, but her spirit shone fiercer than ever. "I told you. I belong to you now." He sighed, rubbing a hand over his brow. "You speak as if words can bind me. In my people's way, this means nothing. A man does not marry a woman because of an accident. A woman's honor is not broken by a glance." Her eyes flashed. "Then your people are wiser than mine. But I am not of your people. My world is different. A woman has little choice but to guard her reputation like gold. Without it, she is nothing. Do you hear me?" "Nothing." The Apache studied her, his expression unreadable. "And so you would chain yourself to a stranger, a man you do not know, because of a law you did not make?" "I would," she answered without hesitation. Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. "Because if I return alone, I will be ruined. Better to tie myself to a warrior than be cast away like spoiled bread." He leaned back against a rock, his gaze steady. "You do not understand what you ask. My life is not gentle. My hands have known blood. My people fight to survive each day. If you came with me, you would know. Hunger, fear, and loss. You would not be a shepherd's daughter tending flocks, but a woman walking beside a man hunted by enemies." Her throat tightened, but she did not look away. "And if I stay, I will face hunger of another kind, hunger for dignity, for belonging. If I stay, I am already dead." For a long while, silence stretched between them. The crackle of the fire and the occasional stamp of the horse's hooves were the only sounds. Two worlds faced each other, hers of rigid rules and fragile honor, his of freedom bound only by strength and survival. Finally, He shook his head, his voice softer now. You are stubborn, shepherd girl, like a thorn bush that clings even in the desert winds. And you, she said, folding her arms, are a coward if you think turning me away will end this. Our worlds may be different, but here we stand, crossing paths. Perhaps that means something, even if you refuse to see it. For the first time, a faint smile tugged at his lips. Not mockery, something closer to respect. But still, he said, I cannot take you as wife. Her heart sank, though she forced herself to stand tall. Then I will not leave you. I will follow until you have no choice. The Apache exhaled, half in frustration, half in reluctant admiration. He saw now that this was not a girl easily broken by fear or scorn. She was fire-wrapped in fragile skin, and though their worlds clashed, something about her resolve unsettled him in ways he could not name. 2 cultures, 2 laws, 2 hearts, already at war, and neither willing to surrender. The Apache had hoped his refusal would end things. He thought the girl would finally see reason, return to her sheep, and forget about him. But by the time he finished breaking camp, she was still there, standing at the edge of the clearing with her sheepdog at her side, her jaw set like carved stone. I told you to go home, he said as he tightened his horse's saddle. And I told you, she replied evenly, that I will follow you. He swung into the saddle, his tall frame rising above her. His dark eyes studied her with the same patience he might have given to a stubborn wild mare. The path I ride is not safe for a shepherd girl. You will fall behind. You will tire. You will regret it, then let me regret it on the road, she said simply. His horse snorted, sensing his irritation. He clicked his tongue, urging it forward. The girl waited until he was a few strides away before gathering her skirt and stepping onto the trail behind him, her sheepdog trotting faithfully at her heels. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, beating down on the dry earth, turning the stones beneath her feet hot enough to sting. Dust clung to her dress, sweat dampened her hair, but she did not falter. Every time he looked back, expecting to find her gone, there she was, small but determined, her face pale with exhaustion, yet fierce with resolve. By the time the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of crimson, the Apache reined in his horse. He dismounted with a sharp motion and faced her. You are foolish, he said, his voice hard. Already your feet bleed. Tomorrow you will wake too weak to walk. Do you think I will carry you? Do you think I will feed you from my hand like a tame bird? The shepherd girl straightened, though her legs trembled. She lifted her chin, her voice hoarse but steady. I do not need carrying. I will walk until my feet turn to stone. I will eat roots if I must, but I will not go back. Her dog barked once, as if echoing her stubborn vow. The Apache studied her, frustration warring with something dangerously close to admiration. He had seen warriors break under less strain than she bore now. She was no trained fighter, no hunter. No nomadic woman used to hardship, yet her spirit burned hotter than many he had known. He threw his blanket down roughly near the fire he built, muttering under his breath, Then stay. But do not expect kindness. She lowered herself onto the blanket without hesitation, curling up beside her dog. I expect nothing, she whispered. Only the chance to prove I will not break. That night, as the fire crackled, between them, the Apache lay awake, his gaze occasionally drifting to her small form silhouetted against the flames. She slept uneasily, her face soft in the glow, her hand tangled in the dog's fur as if anchoring herself to the only piece of home she had left. He turned away, scowling at the stars above. He should have left her behind at the river. He should have forced her back to her people. Yet here she was, stubborn as the desert thorn, following him step for step into a world that would devour her. Still, a part of him wondered if perhaps fate had chosen this path, binding their lives together with invisible threads neither of them could cut. The shepherd girl had followed him, but something deep inside whispered that it was he who was being led. The days stretched long as the shepherd girl shadowed the Apache. Each morning she woke sore and blistered, but when he mounted his horse, she rose too, limping but unyielding. She ate little, drank sparingly, and never once asked for his help. If he noticed her silent suffering, he gave no sign. Yet, with each mile, his irritation thinned into something heavier: responsibility. He could not admit it, not even to himself, but every time he looked back and saw her still following, a flicker of reluctant respect stirred in him. It was late one afternoon, as they crossed a narrow pass between jagged cliffs, that trouble found them. The Apache's sharp ears caught it first, the faint shuffle of feet above, the whisper of stone dislodged. His hand went instinctively to the knife at his belt. He halted his horse, eyes narrowing as he scanned the ridges. The shepherd girl, sensing his tension, froze beside her dog. "What is it?" she whispered. Before he could answer, a whistle cut through the air. In the next instant, 3 men spilled from the rocks above, their faces covered in grime and their weapons crude but deadly. "Bandits," the leader sneered, his eyes glinting as he looked from the Apache to the girl. Well, a warrior far, from his people, and a little lamb strayed from her flock. The Apache drew his blade in one swift motion, his stance calm but coiled like a spring. "Stay behind me," he told the girl without looking back. But the shepherd girl's heart hammered with equal parts fear and fury. These men were jackals, scavengers who preyed on the weak. She had grown up hearing tales of flocks stolen, women dragged away, families left broken. She would not stand by and tremble like a helpless child. One bandit lunged at the Apache, swinging a club. Steel flashed. In a heartbeat, the man fell, clutching his arm where blood blossomed. The others circled, snarling, but the Apache's movements were sharp, precise, every strike the mark of a man who had lived his whole life in battle. Still, there were 3 of them, and he alone. The shepherd girl's hands shook, but her eyes darted to the ground. She spotted a smooth stone near her foot, then another. With practiced speed, she pulled a sling from the pouch at her belt, an old shepherd's tool, one she had used countless times to drive off wolves from her flock. "Stay back!" she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. The bandit closest, to her, laughed, moving toward her with his knife raised. "Or what, little lamb? You'll bite me?" Her sling cracked through the air. The stone struck his temple with a sickening thud, and he staggered, cursing, before collapsing in the dust. The Apache's eyes flicked toward her for the briefest instant, surprise flashing across his usually unreadable face. But he had no time to dwell. Another attacker came at him with a spear. He ducked, twisting, and drove his blade into the man's side. The last bandit, seeing his companions sprawled in the dirt, spat in rage and fled into the rocks. His footsteps faded until the pass was silent again, save for the rasp of the Apache's breathing. The shepherd girl stood frozen, her sling still in hand, her chest heaving. The dog barked wildly at the fallen men, as though to drive their shadows away. Slowly the Apache wiped his blade and sheathed it. He turned to her. Their eyes met, his dark with battle fire, hers wide with adrenaline. "You fight," he said at last, his tone unreadable. "I protect what is mine," she replied, though her voice shook. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, for the first time since they had met, the Apache gave her a single, short nod. Respect. That night, as the fire flickered between them, he said nothing more, but his gaze lingered on her longer than before. She had proven herself, not just a stubborn girl clinging to him, but someone with courage and fire enough to stand beside him. And though neither would admit it, the bond between them had shifted, forged in danger, and sealed in blood. The fire crackled low, throwing sparks into the night sky. The Apache sat cross-legged on one side, sharpening his blade with calm precision. Across from him, the shepherd girl huddled with her dog, her sling coiled neatly in her lap. The silence between them was no longer cold. It was heavy, full of thoughts neither dared to voice. The attack that afternoon lingered in their minds like smoke after a fire. She had seen him fight, swift, unflinching, merciless. And he had seen her, small and trembling, yet fierce enough to bring down a man with nothing but a stone. Neither of them could forget. The girl poked at the fire with a stick, her eyes lowered. "Do you always live like this?" she asked softly. "Always, watching shadows, waiting for danger." The Apache's gaze flicked to her, then back to his blade. "Yes," she swallowed. "It must be lonely." He said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. She thought of her own life, her family, her flock, the endless routine of dawns and dusks. Lonely in its own way, but never like this. He carried a different weight, one she could barely imagine. For a while, they sat in silence again. The dog rested its head on her lap, and she stroked its ears, drawing comfort from its steady warmth. At last she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "When you rode away that day, I thought my heart would burst from shame. I thought I would never recover. But today when those men came..." She paused, biting her lip. "I wasn't ashamed. I was angry. Angry that they thought they could take what they wanted. Angry enough to fight." Her eyes lifted to his. "And I think I was proud to stand beside you." The Apache froze, his blade stilling in his hand. Her words sank into him, stirring something he had long buried. Pride, not pity, not fear, but pride. She had no reason to say it, yet she had. He set the blade aside and leaned back, his gaze settling on the stars above. "You are unlike any woman I have known," he admitted quietly. "Most would have run. You fought. Her." Cheeks flushed, though the firelight hid it well. "I only did what I had to." "Still," he said, his voice softer now, "you are not weak." The simple words struck her harder than any insult could have. All her life, she had been the dutiful daughter, the strong shepherd girl who worked without complaint, but rarely had anyone acknowledged it. To hear it from him, the man who had refused her, the man who lived by his own rules, felt like a gift. She lowered her gaze, hiding the small smile that tugged at her lips. "And you," she said, "are not as heartless as you pretend." He turned his head sharply toward her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. For a heartbeat, their gazes locked across the fire, and the air between them tightened, charged with something unspoken. The shepherd girl's breath caught. She wanted to say more, that he frightened her, yes, but also that he fascinated her, that his presence made her feel both unsafe and strangely protected. But the words tangled on her tongue, too heavy to release. The Apache, too, felt the pull. He had vowed to live untethered, to keep his heart guarded as fiercely as his people guarded their lands. Yet here was this girl, stubborn and wild, slipping past his defenses with nothing more than her courage. The fire popped, breaking the spell. He looked away, and she leaned back, clutching her dog a little tighter. Neither spoke again. But their silence was no longer empty. It was full of glances, of thoughts, of unspoken feelings that grew heavier with every mile they traveled together. And though neither would admit it aloud, both knew the truth. The line between obligation and desire was beginning to blur. By the time they reached the shepherd girl's village, the journey had carved days from their lives and left marks neither could deny. She had grown leaner, tougher, her stride no longer faltering, though her sandals were worn through. The Apache, though silent as ever, no longer looked at her as an unwanted burden. She was something else now, something he couldn't quite name. But fate, cruel and swift, gave them no more time to wonder. The village stirred with commotions. Moment the pair appeared at the edge of the valley. Women fetching water from the well paused mid-step, eyes wide. Men tending to fields abandoned their tools to stare. The shepherd girl, with dust on her cheeks and her dog at her side, was not returning alone. And beside her walked an Apache. Whispers turned to shouts. By the time her father stormed from their hut, the crowd had already gathered, his face weathered by years of sun and labor, flushed with fury. "Where have you been?" he demanded, his voice sharp as a whip. "And what shame do you bring upon us, walking with this man?" The girl's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her heart. "Father, listen, he saw me by the river. He has seen what no man should. By our law, he must marry me." A gasp rippled through the villagers. Her mother covered her mouth with her hands, horror in her eyes. Her father's face darkened, the weight of disgrace pressing heavy upon him. Apache stood still, his broad shoulders squared, his expression unreadable. He had expected this storm, yet now that it raged around him, he felt its force more keenly than he imagined. The village elder, a stooped man with eyes sharp as flint, stepped forward. "Is this true?" he asked, his gaze flicking between the girl and the Apache. "Yes," the girl said firmly, though her voice wavered. "He saw me, and now my honor is bound to him. If he refuses, I am ruined." All eyes turned to the Apache. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. He could walk away. He had told himself this from the beginning, that her laws were not his, that her fate was not his burden. But as he looked at her standing there, small, stubborn, trembling but unbroken, he felt the weight of choice pressing against his chest like a blade. If he left, she would be cast out. He saw it already. In the village's eyes, suspicion, judgment, disdain. They would never forgive her, never let her forget. She would carry the brand of shame until the end of her days. If he stayed, if he claimed her, his life would change forever. No longer the lone rider, free of ties, no longer master of his own path. He would belong not only to her, but to this village, these strangers, this world of rules and whispers. His heart pounded. He thought of battles he had fought, of nights spent beneath open skies, of freedom earned with blood. And then, unbidden, he thought of her, her sling striking down a bandit, her voice fierce with defiance, her eyes soft with unspoken feelings by the firelight. The elder's voice cut through his thoughts. "Well, Apache, will you do what is right? Will you marry the girl?" The crowd leaned forward, waiting. The shepherd girl's lips parted, her breath caught in her throat. The Apache's gaze lingered on her. He saw fear there, yes, but also hope. Hope that he would choose her, not just for honor, but for something deeper neither of them dared to name. And in that moment, he knew. Whatever path he chose, there was no turning back. The silence after. The elder's question stretched like a drawn bowstring. Every villager watched the Apache, waiting for the arrow of his answer to strike. The shepherd girl's heart pounded so loudly, she thought the whole village could hear it. The Apache took a step forward. His shadow stretched long in the dust as he faced the elder, then the girl's father. His voice, low and steady, carried across the gathering. "I will not dishonor her. She will be mine." Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs, some of shock, others of relief. The girl's mother wept into her hands, torn between shame and gratitude. Her father's jaw clenched, but the law was clear. The Apache had spoken, and now he was bound. The girl's knees threatened to buckle beneath her, but she held her head high. He had chosen, not silence, not abandonment. He had chosen her. The elder nodded, his lined face unreadable. Then, so it is. Tonight, the two shall be joined. Let no one speak against it. That evening, under the fading light of the setting sun, a small circle gathered in the village square. No feast, no celebration, only the stark ritual of necessity. The elder spoke words of binding, calling upon the sky above and the earth below to witness. The girl's hands trembled as she placed them in the Apache's, her small fingers swallowed by his strong, calloused ones. By sight shared and honor claimed, the elder intoned, you are now as one. Where one walks, the other follows. Where one falls, the other rises. So be it. So be it, the villagers echoed, though not all with joy. Some turned their faces away, muttering about shame, about strangers, about the fate of their kin. But the girl looked only at him. Her dark eyes shimmered, not with fear now, but with something softer, something she scarcely dared to name. He met her gaze with equal intensity, though his face remained a mask. The ritual ended. The crowd dispersed, some muttering, others silent. At last, they were alone, husband and wife, though no wedding songs had been sung. The girl clutched her, dogged to her chest, unsure of what to say. She had demanded this marriage once, out of anger and shame, never believing it would truly happen. And now here she stood, bound to a man who had always lived outside her world. He broke the silence first. This was not the life I chose, he said quietly, almost to himself. Her heart sank, but before she could speak, he continued. But perhaps it is the life the spirits chose for me. Her breath caught. His words were not tender, but they were not rejection either. They were something in between, an opening, a possibility. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. I know I forced this upon you, but I will not be a burden. I will stand beside you, as I did when we fought those men. I will not shame you. For a long moment he studied her. Then, slowly, he reached out and brushed his fingers against hers. It was not a kiss, not an embrace, but it was enough. A promise in its own right. The firelight of the village flickered against their faces, two shadows bound together by fate, by honor, by unspoken longing. The shepherd girl, once shamed and desperate, now stood as the wife of an Apache warrior. And though the path ahead was uncertain, filled with trials, whispers, and the weight of two worlds colliding, she felt no fear. For in his silence, in his steady gaze, she sensed the truth. This was not just a marriage of necessity. It was the beginning of something far greater, a marriage of fire and spirit.